Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. I will be finishing off today my three-part review of Drawn and Quarterly's new release of the ACME Novelty Library Datebook. This is a three-book collection that comes in a box set. I talk about that in the first video with the box set in Volume 1. These are collections of Chris Ware's sketchbooks. The first volume covers like a 9-year period between 1986 and 1995. The second volume covered an even shorter gap of time from 95 to 2002. And then this third one covers a much longer, pretty much 21-year period of time from 2002 to 2023. So this is the period of time after Chris Ware's kind of been placed on the Mount Rushmore of comic creators. You know, he's up in the upper echelon of our greatest creators. He's got deals with the best book companies who are going to pay, you know, to have a little clock dial on his book slip cover if he wants it, building stories, the gigantic monograph book that he did. You know, this is a creator who's now at the very peak and can do whatever they want. And then also someone during this period who is having his child and growing. This is covers the entire time span of his daughter being born to her moving out. So really the creator at their most mature. And I guess, you know, this is being treated as like the sketchbook project is over, so I don't think we'll be seeing any of his sketchbook material from later in life. But with Chris Ware, I don't know, you never know. He complains about how much he hates this kind of practice, but then he keeps doing it. So I'm sure we'll see his other stuff, but this is kind of like midlife crisis Chris Ware's sketchbook, and like well established. You get some more awesome, like, multi-directional type of Chris Ware cartooning on the end papers. This is the type of stuff that, you know, it's like any spare bit of this I can collect, I'm going to get it. And so that's my major incentive for these books. Obviously, at this point in his career, he's just doing a lot of reflection, a lot of feeling like he hasn't grown much. You know, a lot of thinking about should he try and work in a looser style, just like old cartoonist questions, which with Chris Ware, where he's always so self-deprecating and always so depressed, to see that having a kid and all that doesn't resolve any of that for him is a bit disappointing. He feels a bit stunted in this one, but the sketchbook at least has some more interesting stuff in it, I think. He's even going into right here saying, I fear like that there's nothing of interest in these pages. Like, I haven't really grown as an artist terribly much. I'm kind of the same guy, blah, blah, blah. But then he says, you know, like, some of my favorite books are facsimile notebooks by people I like. And then he goes into the idea of like the essential tool of art, the inner voice, is now being corrupted and colonized by the caprices of algorithms. In fact, I'll say that I sort of think this ceding of the final territory of self not only imperils art, but humanity in itself. And so I think he's saying that there's something about the open, contemplative nature of a human thinking in art, in a sketchbook, that actually is becoming more valuable in the age of AI art. So that's an interesting argument from him. And makes me wish that I did more, that I had time to do more of that kind of stuff. You know, I'm usually not working and doing something artistic unless it's to a finished product anymore, just because of time. It would be interesting to do more unguided art and be willing to make that public, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that's what Instagram's for anyways. So you can see Chris Ware here. He's really settled into his style for doing his comics. He's really settled into his style for doing his autobio comics. That's pretty much throughout all here. He just doesn't usually color them like he did this one, but this is the introduction, so it's not a sketchbook page proper. You get pretty early on in the book, you get his first attempt at drawing his daughter Clara, so that's really cool to see him doing something more personal and see his interests attached to something other than old records and comics. That's really nice. But all the time, he's still doing these little self-deprecating comics here. The writing on these ones as he gets older is getting even smaller rather than bigger, which makes it, for me getting older, harder to read. As Clara grows up, you start to get a lot more interesting content in the comic strips because now he has another source to draw from, but his own awful, depressed little mind. You have this very joyful, curious, intelligent kid and being funny like a kid will be, throwing out these little comments and stuff. And so that gives him something else to talk about besides himself. And as soon as he has that, the content is more interesting, it's funnier, it's better comedic timing and all of that. He also switches over into like the family circus type of format because he'll just have something silly that his daughter said, and that's the caption at the bottom. So really fun to see him playing with those types of formats. You can see in here he's planning out the basic set of components that go into building stories, like the newspaper. This is the little hardcover book. This is the fold-out board. That's the 3-part. Just kind of seeing how they're all going to fit in there. Again, for an obsessive fan of his, that's interesting stuff to look at. The Clara comics continue to be the highlight, I think, of this volume. These are much more entertaining to read and much more precious. There's also some more interesting, like, autobiographical content revealed in these ones, past, like, the fact that Chris Ware is depressed and struggles with coming up ideas from time to time, or feels like he's just played out from time to time. You get things like this where Clara is telling him, like, how awesome in this one. She's like, you make windows for other people to see the world through. So like this super charming thing that would have made him felt great as an artist, and then over here that's cut down on, you know, like, I don't know, it looks like she's probably a few years older. Oh, come on, daddy's stuff is easy to imitate. It's always just some sad-looking middle-aged naked lady laying around on a couch next to a 90s alarm clock or something. So how kids would make you feel the best in the world and make you feel the absolute worst in the world. There's just like a little bit more sense of someone who's actually lived life. A lot of these cartoonists complaining about their sheltered life as cartoonists, to me, just feel like people who haven't got out enough and so don't have enough to say. And so, you know, maybe you should go live some life. It's nice to see Chris Ware consuming that someone else's point of view through his child. A little page here that looks like an old Gold Key comic or something like that. This is The Last Saturday. I forget that character's name. Putnam maybe was his name. This was, I wish this would get finished, but this was something that was being released online for a while. It was an online comic, or at least get it in print. The story never ended, but it's cool to see that in here. There are a lot of pages in here where Chris Ware is just playing a little bit more. Like when you flip through, you see that the majority of the drawings really seem to be intentional. There's like 3 kind of modes that he's in. There's, I'm out in public and bored and probably feeling awkward, and so I'm going to do some sketching of people. Then there's like the landscapes, or yeah, he's in an interior where he's drawing, like really doing a finished pen and ink drawing like this, and they're lovely. And then he has more of his comic strips, or like this. In this one, he's doing a lot more, like, it looks like copying of other people's strips, which is cool because he's playing with materials and you again get a better look at his interests. But I don't know. I don't know if this is him making up a fake Gasoline Alley or if this is him copying a Gasoline Alley. But those things tend to exist in isolation, or they're on a page where maybe you'll get like a comic strip or some of the planning things like this, and then you get a sketch. This is like the monograph book, I think. On this one, though, the kind of like doodly stuff is interacting with the realistic sketches. Like you have Chris Ware cartoon peeking over the shoulder here. These ones are like standing on the leg. They're running around and in and out. This line kind of goes up here. in the midst of the complaints about how his work hasn't really changed much since he was a kid, which is a fair criticism against him, and a lot of the other guys from this era kind of seem stuck in what they got popular with. I'm seeing some possibilities for the first time, in these three books of something different from Chris Ware, and this is like one of those where there's a bleed of what he does, a mix up of what he does that could lead to something else. So that's cool and interesting. And then there are more of these things strewn throughout this third volume, where even though they are just kind of like, here's a sketch, here's a comic, here's a thing, he is like doing some material exploration, working with actual materials to get his colors instead of the computer, and copying things. Like this looks like a copy of some Popeye manga that he found. But within that is like kind of opening up his own stylistic vocabulary again. It seems like he's even uncomfortable with how locked in he's got. Like, I actually really, really love this page here, where he's doing his typical autobio cartooning stuff, but then is coloring in a much darker color palette than normal. And then this switches over to something that has all of his rhythmic styles, but not the style of his finished work. Still feels very Chris Ware, but also different somehow. So I feel him kind of pushing against his own boundaries throughout the book, and that's interesting to see, especially in someone where it is a very valid criticism that they're still amazing, they're still amazing artists, but they haven't gone anywhere from their very earliest releases in terms of style and approach and content and stuff. So it's cool to see him trying. At the pace he works, I don't know we'll ever see some kind of finished work that has something different in tenor, but that would be awesome. And then we get to the point where we're in the COVID years. And so, of course, Chris Ware, the cartoonist who's been complaining about his miserable life where he never leaves the house and has no ideas, is all of a sudden bragging about, as all of us cartoonists did, I'm sure, bragging about how well prepared we are for lockdowns and long periods of isolation. And then he's almost like giving, here, let me give you some tips for being isolated, and then going on and on about, oh, this is so awesome, like I don't get invited to anything anymore. So he becomes extremely happy, and you can see it in like his work, that he's happier. He's not having to get invited to go out and do things. And yeah, like this is just someone who needs to be left alone to draw. So it's so funny that he spends so much time in his drawing about how much he hates being left alone to draw, because as soon as society went that way, he's like, I am ready for it, it's perfect. And then when you see like how much he's doing in the sketchbook, well, I guess this is 20 years worth, so not a lot, but when not a lot in terms of like how much one can accomplish in a sketchbook in 20 years, but you see how much effort is being put into like all these comics, and then you see some of these stylistic variations that he's got going on. And I really just wish that, yeah, he would be putting that effort and that energy into finished products that maybe played with different styles, maybe played with different points of view. It just seems like Chris Ware has fallen into a caricature of himself that he's playing out publicly, that he's almost locked himself into. But the sketchbook shows all of these where he's copying different artists, different cartoonists, looking for something fresh, especially the later and later it goes in the book. So I really hope that this genius, living genius, one of the greatest of our lifetime, of any lifetime in the medium, I hope he lets himself play, because there's a desire in there in these. And now he's had a kid, raised a kid, she's out in the world, he's gonna have free time again, and it looks like someone trying to play, but then he's doing, Portrait of an Old Man and that kind of stuff. So maybe he just needs to retire and relax. But there's a lot of hope, I think, in this third volume, that he's looking for something new, that he's looking for something to say, that Chris Ware has matured in a sense. He's definitely not over his depression or any of that, but I liked this one in the variety that it showed. I liked the Clara strips quite a bit. I thought those were interesting. And then even on the end papers, I think, like this is a really interesting idea that he's had here about showing a page that has three-dimensional depth in and out, like almost drawing a pop-up book or something. So still obviously a genius creator who's capable of still blowing my mind with like a single page out of a whole entire collection. It would be worth it just for this one page, and there's many moments like that. But it's nice to see, compared to the second volume, that even though he wasn't doing as much work in his sketchbook, he was putting that work into finished products and a family. That this is someone who still has a lot of energy and a lot left to give. I just hope that what I'm seeing at the end of this sketchbook is what Chris Ware will allow himself, which is the ability to just play, because he has a great range and versatility, and seems to be feeling a little locked in by what people expect of him. So when you got someone this good, like hopefully the expectation is do whatever you want. We know it will be good. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about Chris Ware and his work after reading this third one is whatever it is, it's going to be good. We're going to enjoy it. Wiggle a little bit.